Hey, ABC, it's Greeno. Going to do a second episode here, I guess, of what I want to call Vinyl Ramble. Kind of digging doing these. Like I said, just trying to shake things up. And the main thing here I'm kind of trying to do is just digging back through the collection and showing albums that I really, really dig, that are really important to me, part of my musical memory, you know. And I'm going to try and not do, you know, I mean, I'm not going to show Master of Puppets, you know. I'm not going to show some Ramones albums, stuff that everybody already knows. Going to try and stay on the, like, the B level and down, you know, and not trying to be all crazy, showing nothing but obscurities and everything, but just showing cool albums that, you know, if I could turn somebody on to, man, it would make me very happy. So hopefully everybody will, you know, if you have time, check out some of the stuff I'll be showing through these videos. Alright, so let's kind of jump into this one. Got three more this time, and the first one is kind of piggybacking on the first video here, talking about that, you know, late 80s, very early 90s era when all this different stuff was going on. You know, metal was kind of overblown, you know, the hair metal and all that, and you know, something new needed to happen, and it really wouldn't happen until Nevermind come out. But there's 4 years or so before that, you know, there's some really interesting stuff going on. Right in the middle there, 1990, this band popped up, and how I heard about them was, again, my friend I was talking about earlier. I was away at school, and him and some other my friends went and saw a band at a local bar. That was it was a big bar at the time. It was around for 4 or 5 years. Got a lot of national acts in, like saw the Ramones there and all that, and you know, then it shut down and we went back to being a hole in the wall. But anyways, they went to see this band just like on a weeknight. They happened to be passing through and played the bar. Never heard of them, but all I know is when I got back into town, they were converted fans, freaks. They were going ape shit about this band, how awesome they were live, and they actually got, hardly anybody was there on a weeknight. And they actually got to hang out with the band, hang out with the singer and talk to him. And by the time I got home, they had picked up the debut album and basically turned me on to it. And it's from that era. I can't talk about that era without talking about this band. And most people probably, at the very least, have heard of this band, if not checked them out before. But I got to show this because I pull it out every so often because it's just one of my all-time favorite albums. And that's Last Decade, Dead Century, the debut from Warrior Soul. And one of my biggest regrets from being young and going to see bands and being into music is I was at college and missed this band playing in my hometown, and I never got to see him. But this album, you know, like I said, it blew my friends away, and it completely blew me away. These guys were like nothing before, you know. It's mainly about Corey Clark, the singer. Yeah, he's the driving force behind this band. If you've never heard Warrior Soul, they're on that metal side, but to me, they're still not metal. You know, there's some, it's like this sonic thing with them, and I don't know what it is. It's not, there's riffs and everything, but it's not cranked up Marshall sounding or thrashy Testament, Metallica sounding. It's this big sonic ball of craziness, man. It's just an incredible band. And Corey, the whole thing behind this band, like I said, is Corey. He came from Detroit. He was in a punk band in the early 80s playing drums. he was working for, from what I've read, working for drug dealers, got into, you know, a bad spot, had to get out of town, not because of the cops, but because of the drug dealers were looking for him. And he ends up just kind of floating around. He ends up like in LA and Chicago, New York. And New York is where Warrior Soul comes together. And he's doing this spoken word kind of stuff. And he ends up telling somebody he's going to put a band together and get signed within whatever 6 months. And that's basically what he did. He got signed to DGC Geffen and releases this first album. He's a total outsider and doesn't trust the government. And at this point when this is coming out, you know, I'm early 20s, you know, you're trying to figure things out. What's your life going to be? You know, where are you headed? Is it going to be what you thought it was going to be? And blah, blah, blah. And just, you know, and I'm a Gen Xer, you know, I don't trust the government, and this album fit right in there, man. This is some heavy lyrics. There's a 4-minute spoken word thing on here called 4 More Years, which is fantastic. At the time, I could pretty much just recite the whole thing as I was listening to it. I listened to it so many times. But like I said, it's all about being just disconnected with everything, man. It's like, fuck the jocks, fuck the preps, fuck the government, fuck all that. And, you know, it's just about rock and roll, or, you know, living your life the way you want to live it. And that's kind of what, you know, Corey sings a lot about on here. The debut, that album is, to me, is perfect. It has a bit of a muddy mix to it. And over the years, you know, I always thought, man, it'd be cool if this thing ever gets cleaned up a little bit, which it did, and it got reissued on CD, where they cleaned the mix up a little bit, and it took a little bit away from it. So I have that on CD, and I've probably listened to it a couple times. I've never listened to it again, and probably won't. I prefer the original, the more touch muddy, but a fantastic album, man. And again, it hit me at the right time in my life, you know, at that point, you know, where you're just starting out and you're figuring out what the hell's going on, and this guy's basically singing about some of the things you're feeling or whatever. But that came out in 1990. Their first 3 albums, to me, almost is like one big album. You had Last Decade, Dead Century in 90. Then you had Drugs, God, and The New Republic in 1991. And it just carried on. The debut is definitely, in my book, the better of the 3. But these 3 could have been a triple album to me. And then in 92, you had Salutations from the Ghetto Nation. And again, he's just carrying on this whole disconnected generation, Gen Xer thing, man. It's a perfect Gen X album to me. Give it a shot if you've never checked them out. The 4th album was called Chill Pill, and that's where it kind of started changing. It has some of this, you know, the whole fuck the government attitude to it, but it also had, you know, we're getting into more just, you know, I want to rock and roll kind of a thing. And then I think there was an album called Space Age Playboys, which I'm not a big fan of. And actually, they just put a new album out, I believe. And I checked out one of the tracks. It's like, it's okay, whatever. I just need these first 3. That's the 3 that are important to me. And you know, they're on my list of greatest albums ever, especially that debut. It's a perfect album. So if you've never checked out Warrior Soul, or if you remember them, you know, back in the day, revisit them, yeah, check them out again. I think these have all been reissued. This is an original, and actually these 2 are reissues, the 2nd and 3rd. I've had the original CDs, you know, since they've come out, basically, but Those reissues are okay. They're a touch noisy, and to be quite honest, man, track down the CDs for $5 or whatever. Probably better off. But you know, if you come across the vinyl, definitely worth picking up. But anyways, check out Warrior Soul if you've never. Alright, next up, kind of switching gears a little bit here. This is later into the 90s. In the 90s, I'm back home. Started a little punk band with a couple friends. A little 3-piece pop punk band. What inspired the whole thing, of course, is the Ramones. But also, Chris, again, the guy I've been talking about, we came across this band called the Groovie Goolies. Lookout Records was reissuing some of their earlier stuff, which neither one of us had caught on to. And Lookout signed them, and they were putting out even more records, you know what I mean, more albums. But we kind of came across them. World Contact Day, I think, was the first one. And just a killer pop punk band, you know, based on sci-fi, horror, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff. Just right up our alley, you know. UFOs and the whole nine. Just great stuff. So we start this little band, and we actually ended up recording an album, you know, in the basement and blah, blah, blah. But, like I said, the Ghoulies were a big part of us even doing that, you know, just inspired us to drink a bunch of beer and write a bunch of pop punk songs. But we got to go see the Groovie Goolies around 99, 98, I guess it was, late 90s. They played a little bar called the Metro in downtown Washington, D.C., which I don't even know if it's still around. I've been there one time, and that was to see the Ghoulies. And they were fantastic. But when we got there, you know, there's a small little bar. It might be the size of like a 3-car garage or something, you know. We get there and talking to some people before the band starts, and it's like, who's opening up? Local band or something? Yeah, we didn't even know. And they're like, nah, it's this band called the Donnas. They just got signed to Lookout and released an album with them, just like the Ghoulies. And we're like, well, that's cool. Never heard of them. And somebody's like, yeah, they're all like, you know, teenage girls. And it's like, okay, this ought to be good. It'll be, yeah, whatever. And the Donnas come on to open up for the Ghoulies and completely blew us away. Completely loved them, man. We got pictures hanging out with them, talking to them, you know, just young girls. And they were rocking. They were fantastic, man. Did a couple Kiss covers, if I remember that night. And anyways, went home the next day and had to go track them down. I got it on CD originally, but finally came across the vinyl, whatever, 10 years ago or something. But it's American Teenage Rock and Roll Machine was their first release for Lookout. And again, everybody probably at least has heard of the Donnas, but maybe you've never checked them out, or maybe you checked out some of their later stuff. But this was their second album. The first one was just a self-title, and actually they had some a release or some singles or something as the Electrocutes. They started out as the Electrocutes and then changed to the Donnas. And the deal is they're all named Donna. You know, Donna F, Donna A, Donna R, that kind of thing. And they were all basically 18 years old when this came out in 98, right around in there. And this isn't technical music, as you can tell. This is young girls playing killer rock and roll. This is a fantastic album. It's a fun album. And again, one of my favorites. It's so steeped in 70s, you know, New York Dolls, Ramones, early Kiss. Just that great straight up rock and roll. The Runaways, of course. You know, it's built on that template pretty much. But, and these girls went on and then to release, what, 7, 8 albums. And ended up signed with Atlantic at one point for a few years, an album or two. And each album, you know, they got a little better. And, yeah, by the end, I just pulled their last album, which is freaking fantastic. Like I said, this is more that 70s rock, punk, garage edge, raw, fun as shit. This is just a great album, and they were perfect that night. They were so fun. They weren't technical, they weren't perfect, they were just loud and banging it out, you know. Guitar players playing a Les Paul through a Marshall, perfect, you know. But their last album was 2007, which is Bitchin', and this was almost like, you know, almost a pop metal kind of an album for their time. And they're, you know, they're pretty much done now from what I've found about them. You know, which, you know, they had a good run. Whatever, I guess they actually started playing and recording together when they were like 13 or something, and they made it all the way to, you know, that album came out in 07, and I think they kind of called it quits around 2012, somewhere in there or whatever. But, you know, they were on a ton of soundtracks, video games, toured constantly. Yeah, very cool band. Like I said, most people know who they are. But this album, if you've never checked this one out, this is the one to check out for if you're a fan of, you know, the Dolls and the Runaways and the Ramones and early Kiss and all that. Man, this is so much fun. So, definitely worth checking out. And, yeah, that's one of my favorite memories from a show, was seeing the Groovie Goolies, who were, I was a huge fan at that point, loved that band, and but to see the Donnas open up and had no idea who they were, and they just blew our heads off, man. They were fantastic. So check out the Donnas, American Teenage Rock and Roll Machine. Alright, last one is a band out of Boston. These guys started out as a hardcore punk band and switched gears in the mid-'80s and kind of went in this metal direction. But it's odd. It's not like a crossover thing. You would think, okay, this hardcore band is going metal, it's going to have a crossover sound. It doesn't have a crossover sound. It doesn't have a metal sound exactly. It doesn't have a hardcore sound. But if you took metal and hardcore without it sounding crossover, this is what it would sound like to me anyways. Killer band. They started out as the FUs, put out like 3 albums, and then name change and direction change. The first full length is called We Are Not Amused, and the band is Straw Dogs. I was late to this band into the 90s, came across them, never heard of them, and heard this and just fucking blew me away. This is a fantastic record. Sadly, right after the recording of this album, the drummer, calling Bones here, was killed in a, I think it was a traffic accident of some sort. I think I've heard he got hit by a bus. I'm not sure if that's true or not. But the album come out and is, yeah, just a killer record. And like I said, it's on that metal side. They were definitely leaning towards metal, but it's not. A metal guy would put this on and not think of it being full-on metal. A punk guy would put this on and not think of it being full-on punk. It's somewhere in between. It's a cool mix. It's not a crossover sound, again. It's just really cool. And the singer, very clean vocals, and like this, I don't even know how to explain the vocals, but they're really cool. They're, you can tell it's this dude. He has his own vocal style. Very, very cool. It'd be interesting to know if Rob up in Boston ever crossed paths with these dudes, or the FUs. I'm sure he knows of them from being in that scene. And that's from 1986. The same year, they the first release was an EP, just a self-titled called Straw Dogs. 5 tracks on here. One of them is a cover of Tie Your Mother Down by Queen. But there's a fantastic song on here called Young Fast Iranians. Killer track. And Trigger Finger, the first song on here, is actually on the full length also. And both these were released on Restless in '86. These guys went on to have a couple more albums, and I've checked these out, and they're, I don't know, they just didn't click with me. not near as cool as these two. The EP's very cool, but this full length is fantastic, man. Just very catchy stuff. And again, I don't know how they did it of this metal hardcore sound, but you know, it's not DRI or anything like that. They definitely hit on their own thing, and I think it may have left them out in the cold a bit because, you know, I think they had a following as the FUs in the hardcore scene, and the metal people weren't exactly accepting them, I guess. I don't know. It kind of left them out on their own, which is sad because, yeah, these guys were definitely doing something different and released an album that, you know, I think everybody should at least check this one out, give it a shot. Very cool stuff. Alright, that's it for this one. I don't know when I'll get another video up here. Keep these going. Just as I pull stuff out and feel like showing it, we'll do it. Alright, everybody's doing well. Later, BC.